Get your paychecks up to 2 days faster with Early Pay. True story. Welcome to Huntington.
Good.
Uh-oh. Somebody's dog's on the loose.
I know which one it is.
It's like the beginning of Good Morning on Sergeant Pepper, where you hear all the animals come on in. So,
excellent.
In that case, good morning all. Welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. This is Saeed Khan, joined by yet again a great group of experts and prognosticators about a week that has been again replete with news. Joining us today, we have former federal prosecutor in the Kwame Kilpatrick case, Michael Bullotta. We have a group from Deadline Detroit. We have Deadline Detroit contributor Greg Bowens, who is fixing his mic as we speak. We have columnist Nancy Derringer, and of course we have editor-in-chief Allan Lengel, who I believe has an announcement to make.
Well, we've already made the announcement. I mean, as of now, we're our last day is going to be September 5th. I mean, I don't want to rule out the possibility of someone coming forward and buying us or whatever and us continuing, but at this point, that is our plan, September 5th. However, the week that was is going to continue. We have a platform on YouTube, we have 2 Facebook pages, and we have a podcast that we put it on now. So it will live on, and we've all enjoyed doing this. We've had a great time doing this, and we hope that people continue to watch.
And for those who are concerned about my future career prospects, I'd like you to know that I was recruited this morning to be a lifeguard at the Grosse Pointe Shores pool next summer.
Wow.
And of course, I am looking forward to my retirement gig in the marijuana business. So there we go.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have one question for you, Nancy.
What's that?
Is it going to be a 1-piece or a 2-piece?
It's going to be one of those Pamela Anderson ones that comes practically up to my rib cage, on the sides, and it requires a full Brazilian to wear without showing too much. Yeah,
all right.
That'll be me. Yeah, for sure.
Now, Greg,
that's for residents only.
Now, Greg, I do believe this is a Title IX violation in the same spirit of Betsy DeVos and Joe Biden. So, please temper your remarks a little bit.
It's funny. It's funny. I did a little aggregation of that story, and it's like one of those things. It's like you don't want to discount that. I mean, it's inappropriate, obviously, but you also wonder what's the end game for her to throw that out. Like Joe was creepy. I mean, we all know that Joe Biden did some creepy little things along the way, and that's it's inappropriate, but it's you kind of I debated between you got to be respectful, and at the same time it's almost like
it's when Irish Catholicism meets Dutch Reformed. For those of you who don't keep up on the news, apparently Betsy DeVos was doing an appearance and she claimed that Joe Biden touched his forehead to hers at some point, and that constituted sexual harassment. And I would admit that is a very intimate gesture. However, we have seen in the past that Biden first of all, he's old, he's touchy, but I don't think in a creepy way. I mean, some people are like that. They always want to give you a hug or whatever, and that's kind of his MO as well. Touching foreheads, I think, should be reserved for lovers and, of course,
and athletes and dolphins.
and dolphins.
Yeah,
I see a lot of it on the. I'll see a lot of it on the basketball court, a lot on the football field. So.
Yeah, I know, but it's a pretty intimate gesture. I also
clearly.
I'm not
clearly his echolocation wasn't working, so I think that has something to do with it.
And this was a 2019 incident, they believe. That it was.
Oh my God!
Before COVID.
Yeah, pre-COVID. Sure.
As we recall, I mean, Joe Biden got himself into a lot of trouble in 1988 when he was running for president, when he plagiarized from the British politician Neil Kinnock. Right. So maybe what he was trying to do is plagiarize from the British with a headbutt, and failed miserably. So, Joe, I think you need to spend some more time in Blighty, like we all do, and go with that.
Oh my God, really? 2019? That was like years ago. And You know, what's interesting about that, she was doing it to make a sarcastic point, which is that the rules that the Biden administration came up with regarding sexual harassment and colleges were so strict that an innocent sort of gesture of concern that he expressed with her could actually get a kid expelled from college. That was her point.
That's a good point.
You know,
That's a good perspective.
But of course,
on it.
you know, as usual, you know, the fake news media.
It originated.
I mean, and turn it into something.
No, we did mention we had quotes from her saying, you know, under the new Title IX guidelines, this would be considered sexual harassment. I'd have to write them up on the college campus and stuff. It was, and I should mention that more. But yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to get too offended by it, but it's like, you know, it can make...
I had a yoga teacher.
I let the facts get in the way of a good click.
I had a yoga teacher just not that long ago, who would ask people in the class, do I have your permission to adjust your permission to adjust your position? Can I put my hands on your hips? This kind of thing. Right. And, you know, at the time I thought that was a bit much, but that's probably the way it has to be.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, in those classes, when a teacher says it, I'm like, I'll take the extra touches.
Yeah, but Nancy, did he ask you?
You get excited going through customs there, Lengel.
Right. Yeah, right.
Anyway, what'd you say?
Here comes that guy again.
Did he ask you in English or in Sanskrit? because it might mean something completely different. So,
right, yeah.
So Allan, next time, if you really want that, I would strongly recommend you wearing an abaya, and you will get touched as much as you could possibly want.
Good to know.
Why is that?
Why is that?
I don't get it.
But Allan, maybe you need to go to a rave.
It's called flying while listening, Nancy.
Right. Pass me around. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Go to a rave.
Find a good mosh pit, maybe. That's always good.
Oh, right. Wow.
I'm fiercely Googling
you're reaching
abaya
back there, Michael. Michael's
Abaya
reaching back to the old times.
Is the long black dress that some Muslim women wear with a hijab, not a burqa, an abaya. So
that's right.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes, and not a burkini. Don't ever get it mixed up with that. Okay, so let's go around the horn.
We're already off the track.
We're never off the track. Everything has a segue. Speaking of abaya, Liz Cheney could probably stand to use one now that she has faced what the state of Wyoming has apparently thought of her. In the Tuesday primaries, Liz Cheney, of course, the scioness of a political dynasty in that state, was, shall we say, shellacked by Harriet Hageman. About, I think it was 60-something% to 20-something%. It wasn't even close. I mean, even if every Democrat in the state voted for Cheney, that would have only been that's only 15% of the entire electorate. I'm pretty sure it had something to do with her position during the January 6th commission. I'm just thinking. Along with, of course, a blistering campaign to discredit and delegitimize her, one that even began with her own House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, shunning her in a way that even the Amish have not faced. And so as a result of it, is this a referendum? Does it really mean that the Republican Party is now the Trump Party? Michael, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, I thought it was really sad. I happen to be one of those people who watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and I believed in Frank Capra endings. I was hoping that Liz Cheney was making her Jeff Smith, Jimmy Stewart play when she was going up against Trump and just saying, you know, I don't stand for lies. I don't stand for, you know, as she put it, you know, basically making this a feature of future elections. Like every election now is going to be, you know, I think even our own primary elections recently, they're talking about, and then the governor's primary talking about there might be fraud. I mean, not everybody's conceding. So it's like what I was expecting, maybe a little naively, I was expecting at least a little bit of a bounce for her, given her high profile role in the January 6th hearings. I thought she did a fantastic job as a former prosecutor. She would be a great assistant U.S. attorney. But there was no public going, yes, you told the truth, you stood up against corruption.
Right.
There was none of that. So it was sad. I thought it was sad.
Yeah, Allan, lest we forget, I mean, Liz Cheney voted with Trump 93% of the time.
Right.
I mean, it's not exactly she's not exactly the antithesis of Trump.
Right. I think at this point she's playing the long ball. She's decided, I can probably get more Democratic votes, sympathetic votes. I've heard a lot of Democrats say, I know I don't agree with all her stances, but I really admire her. I would vote for Liz Cheney. And I think her losing only helps her get more Democratic and independent votes if she runs for president, which undoubtedly she will. Whether, we'll see. I mean, Ron DeSantis, he's up there, and that guy is just, I don't know, whatever. But I think she's okay with. She came in there knowing. I mean, I think it was 69 to 29% or something like that. She got killed, and I listened to some people the day of the election. They were interviewing people, and they were like, Liz Cheney betrayed the Republican Party, and we can't. She won by 73% in the last election. So I think she's okay. I think she was, ready for it. And I think she's going to use that to move on to run for president. So,
well, Liz Cheney did not campaign hardly at all, during for the retention of her seat. And I think that was noted in the press a couple of times that she didn't hold big events. She largely kept her campaigning to friendly crowds in somebody's house, that she knew. And so it wasn't like she went around the state really pressing the issue of why she's doing what she does, why she's been doing what she's done. And considering that, the media landscape, news media landscape is so fractured, if you want to cut through the BS that people pay attention to when it comes to Fox and stuff like that, you've really got to get out there and hit the campaign trail. And she just didn't do that. And so I believe that she saw this as a graceful exit, or not so graceful. Well, actually, yeah, not so bad. As a way to launch to higher aspirations, and fight me about it, because if you can convince me that she was out there campaigning really hard, then we could see it. But that didn't happen. I mean, I think there was a debate, one or two or something like that, but she was not on the Cheney bus crisscrossing, the state and rolling under the big sky out there. She just didn't do it. And
a 70% loss suggests that all the campaigning in the world would not have made a difference. That's the first point I would like to make. The second point is she really couldn't do that because she's in Washington all summer running the January 6th hearings. And so she made a choice. I think she understood exactly what this meant for her to take this role. And it's like a suicide mission in some ways, at least in terms of her congressional seat. But I think she is, she's gonna rise again. The question is, do we need another Republican running for president in 2024? I mean, is she going to end up giving us Donald Trump? I mean, look what happened in the 13th district. We talked about this last week. The more candidates there are, the shakier the final result, because you end up with somebody who just had a plurality. And she could end up giving us another Donald Trump presidency. Woo, boy, that would be the long game.
Or she could end up working in a presidential administration, even a Biden one, who is still moderate, still centrist, and finding a role to be able to persecute or prosecute the Trump crime family in some kind of way on the political side or something like that. I mean, they're it's hard to read tea leaves. And I hear you, Nancy, when you say 70%, but you're looking at the final number, and the real. I think you should consider in your calculation, how much that number would have dropped had she been in there. Would she have won? I think if she would have concentrated on it and done the things that her father was known to do and put some more people in that race and done a bunch of other things, that she could have squeezed it out.
People while duck hunting?
I disagree. I mean, she was dead meat from the beginning once she said on this committee. I mean, it's such a visceral response to her. I wonder if she was concerned about all the exposure if she were to do crisscrossing everywhere. Where, I mean, there's a lot of people with guns in Wyoming. And it's a scary, there's a lot of hostility, and who knows if somebody, the more exposure she was out there, the more potential for her to be harmed physically.
So again, Allan, but again, you're saying that both you and Nancy are saying that she made the decision, and I think we're saying the same thing. She made the decision to leave when she took that position on the committee to really push this.
Right.
And the rest of this is just window dressing about it. But so I say all this to say that I really wouldn't give her loss that much credit to Trump and the influence of the Trump party that people are doing. I really don't.
It's all about.
You can't throw up your hands and say I quit. And then talk about the beating that somebody got after they surrendered.
It's all about Trump.
Yeah.
Well, Allan, you made a point, Allan, about people like Ron DeSantis, and I think this weekend he is campaigning in Pennsylvania for the gubernatorial candidate Mastriano, and for J.D. Vance, the Senate candidate in Ohio. Both of whom I know that Mastriano is definitely an election denier. J.D. Vance is, it's kind of all
correct.
Yeah.
and it shows that, the Republican Party, it's not even as though silence, with I think the exception of Mitch McConnell, is an option. People are just full-throatedly swearing fealty to Donald Trump, including, of course, and I think you have a clip about this, some of the senators from Texas.
Isn't it so strange, though, that these people are paying fealty, like you said, they're lining up to say, okay, I'm going to support this thing we know is not true. It's just so Orwellian to me. It's just like,
well,
at some point, don't we expect
the midterms
to be somewhat more truthful? I mean, it's where does this stuff end?
The midterms, I think, are going to tell the tale. I hate to make any predictions, but after reading the story in the Detroit News today about the state of Republican fundraising in Michigan, it's a pretty safe bet to say that there's not going to be a red wave in Michigan, and it's not just a weak candidate at the top of the ticket, which is Tudor Dixon. It's two insane ones directly beneath her, which is Christina Caramo and Matt DePerno. And I think, Michigan is a purple state in the best year, and I have a feeling they're going to get shellacked. And and when that happens, then the party is going to have some sort of come to Jesus moment and say, how long are we willing to take this? The president. People talk about Biden being, having dementia. The former president, Trump, he's a
personality disorder.
All he wants to talk about is his election defeat and that it didn't happen. And it's one thing to say, okay, Grandpa, let's get you to bed now, but it's quite another for the entire party to go in this direction. Somebody has to wake up and say it's, enjoy retirement, President Trump. And we're moving on.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Allan.
We'll do the little commentary on what's going on today in our world. Al Franken appeared on the Jimmy Kimmel Show out in California this week. And here's just a couple real quick.
But tonight is not about politics. It's about comedy and having fun. So, who's here from out of state to get an abortion?
All right.
Some of the other existential threats facing our nation, the enormous gaps in wealth and income, the threats to our democracy. But I really think that one of the most serious issues facing our country today is just how big a dick Ted Cruz is. I've said it before, but I probably like Ted Cruz more than most of my colleagues like Ted Cruz, and I hate Ted Cruz.
A sentiment felt by more than one person within that audience.
Can you believe that guy thought he could be elected president? I mean, he still does, I'm sure.
Who, Al?
No,
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz. I mean, even people who think, who align with him on the issues and with his politics, still find him, the world. I mean, my husband always talks about he's got the country's most punchable face, and that's absolutely true. I mean, you just want to smack him. He's such. I mean, his kids hate him. His wife, kind of. It's just. Ugh. But oh well.
A friend of mine just.
And his dad was involved in the assassination of
JFK, allegedly.
Yeah.
A friend of mine just connected out of Denver and saw Rafael Cruz there, and just. Even him walking across the terminal, he said the guy's just a tool. So, I mean,
did he have security with him?
Yeah. By the sheer, but I mean, the fact that somebody can be impugned for their sheer locomotive aplomb is something. But you mentioned Tudor Dixon, and we also talked about Betsy Devos. Now, Betsy Devos, of course, is all in with Tudor Dixon. And yet Betsy looks like she's going to be talking to the January 6th committee. Do you think that among Tudor Dixon's more, shall we say, rambunctious and rabid supporters, that Betsy DeVos isn't going to be seen as a bit of a turncoat? Michael?
Again, this goes back to my amazement at how people are willing to line up and toe the party line, or not even I guess it is the party line, but the Trump lie line. And Betsy DeVos sounds like she's going to go and talk about possibly the 25th Amendment and how when she was education secretary under Trump, they were discussing how they may have to invoke it to handle his, as Allan put it, a personality disorder. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see how much information she gives. And it sounds like she's gonna go there and tell what she knows. Now that just shows you why this lie doesn't work. This lie does not work when you play it through. And I hope that you're right, Nancy, that we're going to see the end of it at some point. Maybe they'll come up with a new lie. But as far as it reverberating back on Tudor Dixon, she's done everything she can to get the endorsement from Trump and then distance herself after she got the endorsement. And now, she's going to have to deal with whatever happens with respect to DeVos testifying before the committee. But I don't know that it'll make any difference with the Republican base in Michigan. So I don't see it really having any effect on her candidacy.
I do, at least a little bit. If you follow the right side of the Michigan Republican Party, which is to say, if you follow Melissa Carone on Facebook, you really do get a sense of how they don't like Tudor Dixon. I mean, they see her as the establishment candidate, the DeVos candidate. The DeVos was, she was under suspicion even before January 6th, even before the election. They didn't like her. And, a lot will be revealed at the state Republican convention when they choose her running mate, because the early I don't want to call them moderates because none of them are moderates, but the early kind of consensus candidates, Jace Bolger, a few other people, Mike Cox, I think, have already been swept off the table. And now Ryan Kelly is saying he might be interested, and maybe Garrett Soldano or one of those guys. And it's like, I mean, if they end up getting a super uber conservative to stand next to her as a presentable, pretty conservative, I mean, that just shows you that yes, it's still Trump's party and it's still a mass delusion. But
I mean, it's interesting that Trump goes after all these people calling him rhinos, like Liz Cheney and other people calls them rhinos, but Liz Cheney is so much more a Republican than Donald Trump. Trump really isn't even a Republican. He's just figured out which party would tolerate him more,
Right.
and which party he could ride to victory with. But he's not a Republican.
That's
Well, which one he could dupe?
well, I mean, this is what Nolan Finley writes this column every 6 weeks or so. You know that Trump is bad. Trump is not a real Republican. He's not a real conservative. Nobody wants to hear that. You know,
But
he
Greg,
gets away
I
with
mean,
it because he's Rhino. Because he's Nolan. Sorry, go ahead.
Greg, Michael talks about lies, but I mean, I think it was George Costanza who said that a lie is not a lie if you believe it, and it seems as though there is certainly an overabundance of Costanzaites in the Republican Party, and particularly as we see the ground shifting and the excuses regarding Mar-a-Lago and what was going on with the search. First of all, it was declassified documents, and I can wave my wand and they are all declassified. It's a standing order, or this was a raid. They had no business coming into my house. Of course, then offset by the ideas like, but they're my papers. Is there anything that'll stick to the Donald?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, Saeed, I believe
He's
that
tough
things
one,
are.
man.
Huh? Oh, to be honest with you guys, I believe that things are sticking to him now. Certainly, the amount of support that he had is significantly less than the amount of support he had last November when the election was going on. And that number continues to dwindle. You don't pick up more support. He's not convincing more people to get on board with him. He's hanging on to the people that he had when Joe Biden beat him in the last election. And so there are always going to be people who hang a picture of Trump on the wall, like they did JFK, like they did Jimmy Carter, and say that was the best president ever and we'll never let go. We all also know that a lot of this politics of grievance is wrapped up in identity, in how people identify themselves and present themselves to the world. And so you don't have to believe everything that Trump says in order to stand in opposition to the establishment and what's going on. Trump is a great foil for that kind of thing. So I'll be honest with you. I think that we are not paying close enough attention to the amount of support that's leaving. I mean, let's think about it. Party politics are usually the yawn of America. People generally don't pay attention to what goes on in party politics. And the only thing that's making this interesting on the Republican side is that goofball Trump. That's it. And so I'm not really. I think we can, extrapolate things just a little bit too much here and get out from the norm. 2 years from now, we're going to be looking back on this and going like, wow, why didn't we, it was, glad that fire's out.
I'm really surprised,
it's
Greg. I'm really surprised, Greg, that Mitch McConnell doesn't titillate you more. I just don't. Are you not human, man? Anyway, Allan.
Well, but who remembers those guys? You had Mitch McConnell, and then who was the guy before him? The guy that looked like Eddie Munster. Remember that guy? And who was before that?
All right.
Right. I mean, so these guys, they come and go and they disappear and they prick the American consciousness for a second, and then poof, they're gone. I mean, people talk about politics. They say politics is like sex. You want it so bad, you get it, and it's over too soon. And it's just sort of like a memory, And I'm just saying, it's the Trump phenomenon is something that we're paying way too much attention to here because it's the only thing that's going on in the Republican Party.
Well, I think it's interesting. I was watching some cable news, MSNBC, CNN. Occasionally I'll go to Fox, but the last few days in particular, it's been amazing how much it's been Trump. Trump's, accountant pleads guilty. Trump is going to do this. Trump this and that. And you realize, look, Trump saved the Washington Post and New York Times and CNN. He is so good. People are all he's created a drama. Is he going to get indicted? What's going to happen? Do they have? I mean, he is still sucking up the news cycle all the time, and it's working for the news media. And so at some point, I think, like, do we start trying to ignore this guy a little bit? But he's so compelling for the media that, and people are watching because he's created this amazing drama now. We've got every front: New York, Georgia, DC. There's investigations at all fronts, and his guys are, his company could be, go down or whatever. And it's like, he's good for, like I say, during the 2016 election, he resurrected the Post and the Times that were sagging, and it became so compelling reads.
It's really
But guess what? We're talking about, how often do you hear from Trump directly? He has rallies, and they're not covered live anymore. So these are the stories about Trump. But thank God I don't have to listen to the guy on TV speaking in fractured sentences and railing about nothing.
Well, Greg, if you let him back on Twitter, this could all be solved in a second. So, Michael, I think you had a comment there.
Yeah. I'm kind of a lot of times a big picture person, and what I see the whole Trump phenomenon, I think it's pointing out a huge underlying failure of the Republican Party itself to connect to its base on its own without this snake oil salesman guy with, essentially you could call him a flat earther. Same thing. So we're all going to follow the flat earther because he's tapped into this anger and resentment of a certain part of our population, and we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to connect anymore. Maybe our old Republican ideals are not selling in 2022. So we take the easiest path to election by going with the flat earther. And that's what they're doing.
Well,
hey, Michael, I got a quick question for Michael. What's your thought? I mean, there's a big debate whether Trump will get indicted, whether they have enough evidence. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think we may have addressed this before on the program, but currently, right now, I would say that there is likely going to be enough evidence to indict him on the conspiracy to obstruct a official proceeding, which was what happened on January 6th with the protesters, because he really did want to disrupt it. It was very clear in what he said publicly, and now you have the behind the scenes where he's doing everything he can to commandeer his limousine and get to the scene of the riot. And so I think there's plenty of evidence, but more troubling is the evidence about the false slate of electors. And the DA's office in Fulton County, Georgia, they have the luxury of being able to charge Trump without the same intense political pressure that I think the Department of Justice has. So they have an easier route to go. So I think a state indictment is likely in Georgia. That's what I think. And there may be charges later brought by the Department of Justice, but right now I think that's going to be the first shoe to drop.
Fishman's been saying that from the beginning because he says it's an absolute slam dunk. They just have the tape. There he is. He's saying it, and all you have to do is say, "Is this you?" Yes. Okay. Case closed. So.
It was interesting that Giuliani was brought before the grand jury, and I want to say something about grand juries. So, the federal grand juries, Department of Justice has a rule that you can't subpoena a target to a federal grand jury. So it's unusual for federal practitioners to see that he was providing testimony in the grand jury for 6 hours the other day in Fulton County, Georgia. So it's interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, it doesn't take you 6 hours to take the fifth or claim attorney-client privilege. So I believe that he likely answered a lot of their questions, maybe not to their liking, but he certainly provided something being there that long. And number two, Giuliani is at a point, if I were his attorney, I would say, look, Rudy, your interests now are diverging with that of Trump. For you to go down there and put yourself in any further jeopardy, and I've heard him on the talk show saying, well, I was just, representing my client, zealously, but really he's gone way beyond that. And so right now is the time, I think, for Giuliani to cut bait, cooperate and do what he can to keep himself out of prison.
And
he's
flip
not he's not a young man, and who knows, he could be attacked again in a grocery store.
And flip like the sleazebag he is. I think it was you, Michael, who was saying, how long can this snake oil salesman go on? I mean, I think what we're seeing is almost the culmination of turning politics into entertainment, and that serves not only the media, but it serves a lot of people, and people who sell Trump flags. You said before, was it Greg who said that intra-party politics is yawn time? I mean, it's boring. Politics in general is yawn time. I mean, when we talk about what congressmen do or what they're supposed to do, as opposed to what they do now, which is nothing, it's, do things like set tax policy, think about foreign policy, think about our import, our balance of trade. I mean, all these things that if you were to put in front of an average MAGA red hatter and say, what do you think of all this? They just stare at you dumbly. I mean, I think I told you a few weeks ago that I had seen this profile of Marvella Bai, who is the late wife of the late Senator Birch Bai from Indiana, and her influence in getting Title IX passed, because that was something that Birch Bai worked on when he was a senator from Indiana. Just amazing. But, I found this little paragraph about 3/4 of the way through that said, Title IX is one of Birch Bai's signature achievements in the Senate, along with the 25th and the 26th congressional or constitutional amendment. It's like, we used to do that. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that senators went to Washington and actually worked on legislation and passed laws and passed constitutional amendments. I mean, God, can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine getting a constitutional amendment through 2/3 of the states today? It would never happen. And so, but that's what they're supposed to do. But instead, we send people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, who are both like as dumb as a barrel of hair, and just walk around, with their selfie sticks going, I'm going to knock on Nancy Pelosi's office door, and I'm going to demand to know why she's grooming children for pedophiles, or whatever the hell they're on at this time. So, I mean, the reason that the snake oil salesman is popular is because, to everybody, he sucks the oxygen out of the room. You have to pay attention to him, whether it's benevolent attention because you like him, or the kind that we're all paying to him right now, which is because we all despise him.
I thought the only thing that he ever saved was the Woolman ice rink in Central Park.
Exactly.
But apparently he's resurrected entire media outlets as well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry for the rant.
For sure, running around with Trump is, in order to be a part of the crew, you got to get indicted.
Yeah, right.
So here's a question also from Michael. Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, is resisting the subpoena to testify in the grand jury in Georgia, claiming that the remarks that he made and the correspondence that he had with the Georgia officials back in 2020 were actually part of his legislative privilege. And the pushback on that is, well, no, he was being about as political AF. And I don't mean Air France. So how do you see that court case going? And will Lindsey have to get into the dock?
Yeah, so there is legislative privilege. Things like a congressman traveling. Let's say a congressman is on his way to vote, and he's driving under the influence of alcohol and gets pulled over. They really can't arrest him. That's a real thing. If he's on,
Seriously?
Yeah, it's very strange, but it's true. Wow. And so
I had no idea.
There is weird legislative privilege. However, there is a very important exception, which can apply, and may or may not in this case, which is if these communications, he wasn't on his way to vote, so that he can't use that exception, and if he was conducting his communications in a way to contribute to or aid and abet any kind of conspiracy to obstruct justice, which would be the counting of the votes and tabulating the proper election standings, then that privilege could be completely thrown out the window. So I think they're going to work something out. I think his attorneys will work with the state prosecutors there, and he will eventually have to testify. That's what I think would happen. And the way it would get fought, by the way, is it would start off in state court, and then it could get appealed to a federal judge in that district.
Michael, I have a question about the grand jury. My understanding is, okay, if you go before a grand jury, you can plead the fifth. However, at least in the federal system, if they really compel you and they give you immunity,
Right.
then you have to. And if you don't, then they can put you in, the judge can put you in jail. Is that?
That's right. That's what happened to the McDougalls, if you remember that case. Susan McDougal refused to testify, even after they gave her what's called 6001 immunity, which is what you're referring to, Allan, where in grand juries you can be forced to testify, even if you have a clear Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate yourself. And the reason that you're forced to do it is because you're given immunity, saying that anything you can use, not only what you say can't be used against you, but anything that comes of what you say. So we call that derivative use immunity. So you have all this immunity given to you, and then if you decide you still don't want to testify, that's when you end up like Susan McDougal and being put in jail pending your decision. They call that you hold the key to your own jail cell. As soon as you decide to talk, then they release you from jail. So that scenario is possible as well.
Right.
It's fascinating.
I think that the 6 hours that Giuliani was there is because they were asking him if he could name every Four Seasons property around the world, and to see if it was just hotels or whether it was the landscaping place where he gave his press conference.
Or they just kept serving him double scotches and he just kept pounding himself.
Somebody gave me as a present a T-shirt from the landscape.
What, Four Seasons Total Landscaping?
Yeah, I have a T-shirt of that.
Brilliant.
Yeah, they got a merch line now.
Right,
They should. They absolutely should. That is absolutely
Giuliani, brilliant marketer.
Well, lest you think that this show is recorded like weeks in advance, because how the hell could that be? Otherwise, we'd be oracles. Just wanted to let you know that the Oakland County judge has ruled that state prosecutor or county prosecutors cannot enforce the Michigan abortion ban. So it looks as though the extension or the restraining order has been extended, and it looks like it probably will until the Whitmer case or the lawsuit brought by Planned Parenthood makes its way through the Michigan Court of Appeals.
I have a question for Michael. Maybe
I was going to jump in. Do you want to know what's going on with that?
Well, I want to know why an Oakland County judge can do a blanket for the state of Michigan. How that works.
Well, first of all, I would just back up and say, some of the viewers might be wondering, because Roe versus Wade was overturned, how is it possible that you still have a right to an abortion in Michigan? And the answer to that is that there are two constitutions that are at play. One is the federal constitution, one is the state constitution. Now, the federal constitution is the floor. Okay, that's the floor of the rights that states cannot take away. So, for instance, we have the Fourth Amendment that says, if a police officer violates your rights, even on a gun case, then the evidence is not admissible. It's excluded. But Michigan actually has a provision in the Constitution that says in gun and bomb cases that even if they violate your rights under the Constitution by an illegal search, you still can bring that evidence in. And so what does that mean in reality? Nothing, because you have the floor of the U.S. Constitution saying the Fourth Amendment applies. Now, the opposite is true, too. The floor is just that. That means that the states can provide greater protection in their Constitution. And that's what the lawsuits are dealing with right now, is whether the state of Michigan's Constitution does provide that right to an abortion. And therefore, the 1931 statute on the books is unconstitutional and cannot be enforced. So that's what's at battle now. So as far as how it can restrict the entire state, it becomes precedent. So if the judge makes a ruling, then that would be the precedent, at least as far as lower courts. But what will really happen, what actually happens, is it gets appealed. It'll go up to the Michigan Court of Appeals, eventually the Michigan Supreme Court, which is now slightly leaning left. I believe it's 4-3 in favor of the Democrats, I believe. And so that could be helpful in from the proponents that want to maintain the right to an abortion. So it's not going to bind the whole state until it gets to a higher level. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's my thoughts on that.
That was a needlessly complicated explanation. It was very lawyerly. It was very lawyerly.
I enjoyed it, Michael. I enjoyed it.
It was
I
good,
enjoyed
but
it.
I
There might
was
be
kind of
one
like,
listener that if so,
Oh,
email
man.
me, michael@blottaloud.com. Let me know.
To quote,
And we just had our master class.
to quote James Bond in both On Her Majesty's Secret Service and No Time to Die, we have all the time in the world, Nancy. So that explanation was fine for me.
I liked it. I appreciate it.
I did. I
Okay.
did appreciate it. I just thought it was.
I
kind of
appreciate it too, Michael. Don't get us wrong.
Right.
We're just ribbing on you, man.
Yeah, Nancy, your idea that politics and the law can be boring and they don't stimulate anyone. Need I remind you that there was once a man who claimed that he self-gratified to the sound of the wheel in Price is Right. So there is some stimulation for everyone.
There is.
We're all God's children.
Yeah.
Wow.
Somebody has sex with Lindsey Graham. God knows who, but there we go.
And Ted Cruz.
And Ted Cruz. I know.
Oh,
Oh my God.
my eyes.
You know, I'm going to miss the woman who does Ted Cruz on SNL. I think she's leaving, but she did a great Ted Cruz.
Yeah. Was that
Oh,
Kate
my
McKinnon?
goodness. Was it Kate
She
McKinnon?
did-
No, it wasn't Kate McKinnon. It was I can't remember.
Kate
her name.
McKinnon did so many male characters. I forget.
She was
She did
good.
Sean
They were
Spicer.
all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did.
Yeah.
That
Oh
was very
yeah,
good.
that was hilarious.
Okay,
Really
so
good.
speaking about objectionable content, so wrong answers only first. What do the Bible, Anne Frank's diary, Toni Morrison's Bluest Eye, I Am Jazz, and All Boys Aren't Blue have in common?
I know.
No. Well, wrong answer first. They were all used to swear upon those books when running for public office. No. Okay.
They are they've all been pulled from school libraries in the awful state of Texas, where I wouldn't live.
You don't follow directions at all. I said wrong answers first, damn
Oh,
it.
okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, no. Now that you said that,
Nancy's always got to be right.
They've all been used to prop open the door of Ted Cruz's bathroom. So
Somebody says 80 Bryant was the woman who from Steve
80
Adelson
Bryant,
has just
okay.
written. 80
I have a
Bryant.
wrong answer for you. So, my wrong answer is all those books were read and completely understood by the same person who got gratified by the sound of the Price is Right wheel.
Damn.
Okay, I have an
Come on.
answer. Those were the books that Monica Lewinsky bought from Kramer's Books for Bill Clinton.
Dang.
My
That's good.
answer is all those books are in Donald Trump's personal library.
and he keeps looking for the good parts, but he can't quite.
Right.
Well, we do know that he was clutching the Bible when he walked across Lafayette Park to the church with all that melee. Well, Nancy is correct.
Sorry.
Almost buzzkilled the whole segment. But Keller School District in outside Dallas, in fact, has banned these and several more books for being objectionable. In the case of the Bible, of course, there is a lot of very titillating things, especially in that Old Testament section. And then most of the books were considered to be off limits because of LGBTQ plus. Anne Frank's diary, the graphic adaptation, was considered to be apparently objectionable for, I think, some discussion about pubescent girls and their cycles, but I'm not sure what else was in the diary that would have been objectionable. But in Texas, apparently it all is. Is this really the new battleground?
Yes.
It's libraries. We had a case in Michigan as well, Nancy.
Yes, I think so.
Did you say the Bible was banned?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think it is, and I also think it's going to, as my husband says, be a fart in a hot skillet. It's not going to last. It's not going to last.
I love that. I've never heard that.
You were like the
going-
Bones McCoy of this show with your
It's
wittyism.
going to be like CRT. I mean, remember CRT when CRT was on everybody's lips? Now it's like kind of we've forgotten about CRT. Now it's all going to be about LGBT. It's the trans menace is basically what this is all about. And I found I was looking on the FEC United website, and I found a very comprehensive spreadsheet of books in the Grosse Pointe systems that these people had objected to, and it included all of those. And my feeling about this is And I have to tell you, Allan, I wrote and discarded 2 columns about this when Lana Theis was weeping on local podcasts talking about how terrible it was that young children might be exposed to this awful stuff.
Yeah. Right.
But the fact is, if your kid is reaching for a book in a library and opening it and reading the words on the page, I think you have triumphed in a way that I think almost any contemporary parent would say, huzzah. I don't care what they're reading as long as they're reading. And, the Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye, this woman is a Nobel Prize. I mean, I just read The Bluest Eye just a couple of months ago. There's absolutely nothing in it that a middle schooler on up would find titillating or anything else. I mean,
that's why I didn't read it.
Of sexual abuse of children.
Yeah, but Nancy, I mean,
Allan.
given where the bar is in your home for prosaic language between you and your husband, I'm sure there must be language in there that someone would object to. I mean, a fart in a skillet, for God's sake.
Hot skillet. A fart in a hot skillet, yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember when I was in middle school in Lapeer, Michigan, the chocolate war was banned because it was considered to be too dicey. But lest we forget, even more recently, 25 years ago, all of the hullabaloo around the first Harry Potter book, when those who objected to it thought that this was satanic. Witchcraft. Okay, come on, Greg. I'm going to go and do the hi-hat. You got to sing Witchcraft now. Those fingers in my hair.
That's like
I don't know. I'm more of a Trekkie.
Yeah. But no, you're right. I mean, and the fact is that in the pre-internet days, we used to pass this stuff around in junior high school.
In paper bags?
No, not at all. It was in my junior high experience. It was The Godfather, which has a very, very spicy scene, atrociously written because it's Mario Puzo. Early on, where Sonny Corleone bangs a bridesmaid up against the wall at some, at the wedding.
At Connie's wedding.
Yeah, at Connie's wedding, exactly. And we were like, oh my God, it's page 22. Oh my God,
Oh, come on. Who didn't sneak their parents' romance novels?
Well, my
and
parents
turn to the
didn't
good
read
parts.
romance novels, but I found some Henry Miller in their stash, and I read that stuff too, and that was pretty spicy. But
I tried to stash my dad's medical journals. I'm like, what the hell is this Latin?
I took my mother's National Enquirers.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't know about you guys. You guys are referring to things with a lot of print. I don't know. Maybe
I know.
I didn't have that much print.
Well, right. And
I will tell you,
today,
I did find in my great grandparents' room the Kama Sutra. I was like, woo.
Wow.
Grandparents was like, wow. It just had pictures. I was like, oh, okay.
Ooh,
Am I supposed to look at this? What did get
right. I mean, the point being, as Michael points out, the point is that any kid with a smartphone, and virtually all of them have a smartphone, or one of their friends has a smartphone, can see the vilest pornography in the world, in about 10 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
So the idea that somehow you can keep, things away from them by pulling them out of school libraries is simply ridiculous.
Right.
So,
oh, that's so
yeah.
Well, but maybe in some of these places, Nancy, instead of being sort of an urban elitist, the internet may just not either be available or fast enough to enjoy said porn. So maybe these books is all they've got.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Megan, for talking about Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. Yes, for those of us who read Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing and Blubber, and otherwise known as Sheila the Great, the real taboo one was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Yeah.
That
was past my time. So I was definitely Go Ask Alice and The Godfather. So there you go.
Jeez. You like to raise The Godfather. You
know what? Yeah.
In junior high, we were supposed to read the Dick Gregory book, which was titled The N-Word. And it was funny, when we were buying the book once, there was a fellow student of mine. He gets up to the front of the line to the bookstore, and the lady is black. And he goes, can I have the book Negro?
Oh my
Well,
God.
when I worked for the Columbus Dispatch, they censored the movie listings. They would accept any porn theater in town. They would accept them, but they censored some of the titles. And the one that was, I think it was Jim Brown. Do you know blaxploitation films, Greg, or anybody?
Absolutely.
Was it called? It was
Yeah,
called Boss
for sure.
N-word, right?
Superfly.
Yes, it was
No,
called.
but
Yeah, it was
Boss
called.
N-word was one.
Yeah, and it was in the paper. It was Boss in parentheses Negro. So Boss.
Oh, wow.
Negro. So yeah.
Well, one of the things I think that we can probably all agree on is that if parents are afraid, or anybody's afraid of what someone else may be reading, because it causes them to think, they're not really afraid of what they're reading. They're afraid of thinking.
There you go.
They oppose thinking.
Yes. Obviously.
And by the way, for those of you who are not going to the Dream Cruise this weekend, if I may recommend Sweet Back's Badass Song,
Sweet
by
Back. Yeah, exactly.
by Melvin Van Peebles. So yes, if you're trying to stock up on your blaxploitation movies, that one is definitely to watch. Also Shaft in Africa and the other ones with the original and great Richard Roundtree. That is a trilogy worth watching. Samuel L. Jackson, sorry man, it does not compute.
It starts and ends with Superfly for me. Although I will give you that Trouble Man has a Marvin Gaye soundtrack that I think is the single best. And blaxploitation movies had spectacular soundtracks, but that one is the absolute best of all. So there you go.
There you go. I mean, up there with The Graduate.
Some people call Crazy Rich Asians an Asian exploitation movie.
Actually, you know what? We watched that on Christmas Day a few years ago, and I said this is wealth porn. It's not, has nothing to do with Asians. It's like, this is rich people pornography, and I'm embarrassed to be watching it, because that's all it was. It was like, oh, here's another set piece, the cost of things that cost $1 billion. Let me take you around on my yacht, that sort of thing. But anyway.
Well beyond the imagination of this very modest group. Allan, I do believe we are at that time of the show.
We're at that time.
Is that
You're Schmuck. And I'm thunderstruck by your arrogance and your idiocy. It really is no mystery. It's true, and you know it. You're Schmuck.
He is playing an Ovation acoustic electric guitar, which I have myself. I'm just going to now have to learn that
stuff.
We got to get Saeed on Jeopardy.
I know, man.
I would have done it with Alex. I'm not going to get into the new melee of who's the host. I mean, especially now that they decided against LeVar Burton. So, they should get Al Franken. I mean, if Jimmy Kimmel can, he would be a great host. Or, Norm Macdonald.
Well, they've already filled the job. It's Ken Jennings and what's her face?
And Mayim Bialik? Blossom?
Yeah, Mayim Bialik, right.
Yeah, okay. All right, who wants to go first with the schmuck of the week?
I'll do the obvious schmuck. That is Donald Trump, who the war was created after, continues to schmuck along.
Yeah.
As everybody in his crew gets indicted and pleads guilty for one thing after another, and yet he runs around raising money on lies and attacking, the FBI. It's just crazy. It's crazy. I wish this guy would get out of the public consciousness. And I guess the thing about it is, like I said earlier, I'm happy to not have to see him at a podium talking all the time. But there's so many stories about him that it's driving me bananas. And, I wish this guy would just stop it. Just sit down.
I want him to sit down on the toilet in his preferred whatever of the moment and die like Elvis. I mean, that would be the ultimate. Yeah, exactly. That would be the ultimate loss of Donald Trump. But anyway,
wouldn't you prefer that he actually sat down in the worst toilet in Scotland, as in Trainspotting, and then met his maker?
Nah. Okay. I like the idea of it happening at Mar-a-Lago.
And by the way, Allan, I mean, on behalf of the goy like Greg and I, can schmuck be used as a verb?
Any way you want it.
All right. Okay.
We are schmucking.
I just needed a Yiddish fatwa on the use of the word, so thank you for that. Yes. Okay.
Oh, speaking of Yiddish fatwa, nobody mentioned my man is recovering from being stabbed.
Salman Rushdie, he is. Yes. He
Yeah.
was pretty badly injured. With, I think, I'm not sure yet if it's confirmed if he might lose an eye, but a lot of damage to the liver, and also some nerves severed in the arm. But he is alive and he is recovering. So
10 times.
Yeah.
That is breaking
12
as we went on the air last week. So,
on last time, that's right. Nancy.
I am going with what I consider a pure definition of schmuck this week, and I am giving it to Jim and Faye Palin, who you may know as the former in-laws of Sarah Palin. On the eve of the election last week, they hosted a election eve party for Nick Bejic, who was running against her, and I think he actually was one of the 3 top finishers in the ranked choice voting. And I'm awarding this mainly because the hardest thing to do when you get divorced from somebody, I think, and I've heard this, I've never been divorced, but I've heard this from others who have, is that you cannot shit talk your ex to your children. Okay? I mean, it's like they're still the parent of the other parent of your kids, and no matter how acrimonious the divorce is, it's to your credit if you can keep a civil tongue in your mouth and not trash your ex. And what these people are doing is they're essentially taking the sides against the mother of their grandchildren. And if they never saw their grandchildren again, I think it would serve them just right. It's like, if you don't like her, if you can't stand her, fine, don't vote for her. But it's like throwing a party for her opponent. I think it's just really, really schmucky. So that's mine.
Yeah.
Or they could see them when they throw a fundraiser for them when they run for office. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
That could happen. Okay, Michael, who is your schmuck of the week?
I was going to say the people that voted in the Republican primary in Wyoming, but I covered that one. No Frank Capra ending, at least not yet. Maybe when she wins, becomes the first female president, we'll see. But I will say that it's the NFL and Roger Goodell. That is my week of the week. Deshaun Watson was given 11-game suspension and a $5 million fine. $5 million fine when he's making $300 million is not a big fine. And my problem with it is that the NFL has really no business in setting the punishment for a criminal act. And when they do it, they can't get it right. They're in a no-win situation. So, you get Tom Brady, who deflates a football maybe a tiny, tiny bit that's barely just discernible by anybody but an expert. He gets 4 games. Deshaun Watson has 26 women filing suit against him for essentially the same kind of sexual assault, and he gets 11 game suspension. Not even a full season, just 17 games. I don't understand it, and I think that Roger Goodell and the NFL should just get out of the business of suspensions and just say, we're going to let the system take care of it, and that should be it, because otherwise I feel like it's just a bunch of hypocrisy. He comes out strong for victims' rights. The NFL supports victims' rights, and then they go and do this. I mean, at the very least, I would think the full season, at the very least, if not 2 seasons. It's just not right. And a schmuck would be the Attorney General's office for the state of Texas. If they can't put all these cases together and bring an indictment of him based on all these victims in Texas and show a pattern, that should have happened. He should have been charged. Maybe he still will be. I don't know. But I feel like in this world of Me Too and supporting victims' rights, this man just got away with everything because he's really good at throwing a football, and that's schmuck-like behavior. So that's all.
Yeah.
Well, you know that the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, I think is under investigation himself. So it's not like that office is exactly a well-run machine. But what about the idea, Michael, you got the NFL, but what about the NFL Players Association? I mean, is there, I don't know this question, but given the players' agreements and how powerful they are, do you think that they have then blunted the kinds of punishments that are available for the NFL to then be able to apply?
Absolutely. So it's just like when you have a criminal case and you're letting people plead guilty for certain sentences. You're setting the bar. So right now, 26 sexual assaults is 11 games. So, what if you kill somebody? What if you, well, we know, I don't want to talk about Ray Rice, but what if you, what if you do something more serious? And it's just, that's why I say it's a no-win situation for the NFL to be giving these penalties out, because what Roger Goodell should do is say that, look, I don't know what happened. We're not in the business of investigating crimes. We're going to leave that to the experts. I will say this, though, that if this player is found guilty, then he's off. He's out of the NFL, period. It should be something with a more of a bright line, so that there is some level of respectability to Roger Goodell and what he does. But getting into a specific sentence for a specific number of assault victims, it's just there's no reason for them to do this, and it makes them look silly. It makes him look like a hypocrite. It's stupid. So I would like to see the NFL get out of that business.
Well, the city of Detroit never killed anybody, never assaulted anybody, and yet the NFL punishes us with the Lions. So there is no justice. Allan.
I am going to go with Trump CFO Allan Weisselberg. I mean, the guy is a criminal. For him to have lasted that long in that organization, and who knows how much dirty stuff that guy did at the behest of Trump, and and in all likelihood Trump knowing, but he's not going to testify against Trump. They say just against the organization, but that guy is a sleazebag. So, or a schmuck of the week.
Got it.
All
All
right.
right. Well, I have multiple schmucks here. The following all are a collective: Khloe Kardashian, Kanye West, Jay-Z, or as he's known in England, Jay-Z, P. Diddy, Reese Witherspoon, Tom Brady, and Jared Kushner. All of these celebrities took PPP loans during the COVID crisis for their various businesses, and they've all had them forgiven. Khloe Kardashian, with a personal wealth of $1.2 million, took $60 million.
1.2 billion, I bet.
Billion, yeah.
1.2 billion. Sorry.
Yeah.
Kanye West, who has a net worth of I'm sorry. Actually, she took 1.2 million. Her net worth is 60 million. Kanye West took 2.4 million with a net worth of 2 billion. Jay-Z, 2.1 million with a net worth of 1.3 billion.
Wow.
P. Diddy, or now just Diddy, 2 million with a net worth of 1.3 bill.
Wow.
900 million. Reese Witherspoon, $975 million is her personal wealth. She took 400 million. Tom Brady,
400 million for what?
That couldn't
her
get. She couldn't
business.
get. No, it couldn't be that much.
That couldn't be that much.
Maybe it's 400. Maybe you know what?
Maybe
I
4
said
million.
Greg. It's 4 million. Sorry.
Okay.
Tom Brady, 150 million for a net worth of 960 million. Jared Kushner, who by the way got 2 billion from the Saudis, took 3 million with a net worth of 800 million. That is taxpayer money. Yes,
That's
it's legal,
unbelievable.
but the spirit of the law certainly is problematic. And Julie Johnson says they should have been prosecuted for fraud.
And she's right.
Well, or something. But yes, the schmuckery is of no end. And I am glad that Beyonce's album is tanking despite the fact that she had 24 songwriters and Jay-Z behind her. So, ha!
Crazy.
Man, y'all better leave Beyonce alone, man.
By the way,
What's wrong
Greg,
with you?
because you were looking away from the screen and I woke you back up.
Because you started, all I heard was the buzzing about Beyonce, and I was like, trying to contain myself.
I saw the hive starting to shake and shimmy. All right,
Anything
listen.
for a click. Anything for a click.
You got it. All right, listen, thank you again, Greg Bowens, Michael Bullotta, Nancy Derringer, and of course, Allan with the last word.
Drive home safely.
Now, we will be back next week and the week after that and the week after that. We're not going anywhere. So thank you so much for being loyal to this week, the week that was. Thank you again, people. Have a great week.